Hey friends, I am reading from the Let Them Theory and the Book of Boundaries. I'm reading aloud, something new that I'm just trying. I'm doing a study session, trying to read 2 chapters in each book. So I'm just reading along, and I've read chapter 1, part of chapter 2, actually, the end of chapter 2 in the Let Them Theory aloud, and I read 3/4 of chapter 1 in the Book of Boundaries aloud. So I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you on the next one. Love you plenty.
Sharpen, so that way it's ready for the next time. I either pick it up or the next time I just color in general. Alright, now can we use this and I can like do that? Let's see. Let's do some colors I haven't used yet. Why not? Oh, I love this. Okay. We have a light blue. And what should we make light blue? I'm gonna do, I feel like the sweatshirt should be light blue.
I'm watching my daughter as she's doing a live while I'm reading the Let Them Theory. All right, I guess we can, since we'll put her on mute, and I'm gonna read out loud, I guess. I'm on chapter 2, page 48, and this is getting started. Let them, let me. When I lose my cool, I make bad choices as a parent. So the Let Them Theory has been very helpful in teaching me how to stay calm, confident, and grounded when situations with my kids feel overwhelming. Every time I say let them, I am acknowledging that my kids are capable and stronger than I think. The let me part reminds me that my job is in supporting, listening, and guiding, not controlling. That said, I am still the parent, so there is a balance between trusting, letting them, and providing the support they need and stepping in when necessary. So in order to help, you use the theory to strengthen your bond with your kids, teens, and young adults, and hopefully keep your sanity intact. I've created a special guide in the appendix at the end of the book that breaks down parenting and the Let Them Theory in detail. In other words, when to use the Let Them Theory and when to step in and take charge. This is so important that I wanted to get it right. So I reached out to Dr. Stuart Avalon to help me create this short guide to using the Let Them Theory as a parent, coach, caregiver, teacher, or grandparent. Dr. Avalon is an award-winning psychologist who runs the Think Kids program at Massachusetts General Hospital. He's also a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry at Harvard Medical School and a leading expert on behavior change. You can trust his insights because they are based on his 30 years of research and clinical experience. And now we're on to the second point she was making. On the previous page, she says, before we dive in, she has 2 warnings. So the first one was, does the let them theory apply to children? So that's what we just read. Second, what if using them makes you feel lonely? This is a critical point. Some people have shared that they feel lonely after using the let them theory. If you're feeling this way, it's a sign you're applying the theory incorrectly. The let them theory has 2 essential steps: let them and let me. These steps must go hand in hand. You cannot simply say, let them, and stop there. Many people forget the second step, let me. And this is a major mistake because let me is where your real power lies. It's in let me that you take responsibility for your next move, for creating the life, relationships, and connection you want. Without this step, you'll find yourself disconnected rather than empowered. As your friend, I feel obligated to warn you that if all you do is say let them, you're going to find yourself without a lot of friends, without a lot of social plans, and confused as to why the theory isn't working in your favor. It feels good to say let them because we like to blame other people. And as we've discussed, a jolt of superiority can help when you feel down. However, that's not the purpose of the theory. Let them is not an excuse to stop answering your phone, to shrug your shoulders, to refuse to talk it out with a friend or family member who is hurt, to stay in a situation that hurts you, or to ignore discrimination or dangerous behavior. It's not a license to give someone the silent treatment, ghost people, avoid hard conversations, or withdraw from your relationships. It's not supposed to leave you feeling alone and invisible, but rather more connected and more fulfilled in every single one of your relationships. If you find that you're using the theory and it's making you lonelier, please hear this. You are using it wrong. The theory is here to make your life better, not worse. So I'm reminding you to always remember to say, let me, because that is the part that will change your life. Using the let them theory, I saw how often I blamed someone else for the fact that I was alone, sitting on my couch, or not making the money I wanted to make, or how often I said yes due to guilt, or the decisions I made because I didn't want to disappoint someone else, or how often I used the excuse of being too tired to make my health or fun a priority. When you're an adult, your life, happiness, health, healing, social life, friendships, boundaries, needs, and success are all your responsibility. If you've been secretly hoping someone else would come and rescue you, fix your problems, pay your bills, create a social life, heal your wounds, change into your dream partner, and motivate you to be your best, it's not going to happen. No one is coming. And any time you spend blaming other people or waiting for permission or an invitation is wasted. Those days are over. It's time to take full responsibility for your happiness, your dreams, and your life. After all, responsibility is simply the ability to respond. And as you've just learned, true power lies in your response. You are capable of creating anything that you want if you are willing to put the time and energy into working for it. Your let me era is here, and that means you must stop wasting your time and energy on petty, shallow, and insignificant things. And it also means that you have to stop trying to control the one thing you can't, other people. In the next section of the book, we're diving into 4 core areas of your life where the let them theory will create the biggest and most immediate positive impact. You'll learn how to stop allowing other people's behaviors, opinions, reactions, and success to affect your happiness and stand in the way of what you want. And there's no faster way to get started and to feel the power of let them than using it to manage stress and protect your peace. So let's jump in. And then the next section of the book is you and the let them theory, managing stress, fearing other people's opinions, dealing with someone else's emotional reactions, and overcoming chronic comparison. And she says, quote, "The more you let other people live their lives, the better your life gets." So the next section in chapter 3 starts with managing stress. And it says, shocker, life is stressful. So I'm looking forward to continuing reading this book. I'm doing like a study right now of reading the let them theory and also reading the Book of Boundaries from cover to cover. We've gone over this book and I've already read this chapter, part of this chapter, chapter 2. I'm starting with like 2 chapters. So every couple of chapters I'm getting into it so I can have a study conversation with a partner. And then we're going to talk about this and how this works in our lives and everybody else's and how it affects us and how this book, the let them theory, goes hand in hand with, which I left it over there, the Book of Boundaries. So the next thing I'm going to do is read from the Book of Boundaries. And I'm reading the 1st and 2nd chapter of that book as well. And then we're going to have a discussion on these 4 chapters. So that's what I'm doing. So thank you for watching this. And come back so you can hear the first 2 chapters of the Book of Boundaries. I know I started this one in the end of chapter 2. I didn't start from the beginning because I was in bed reading. And then I decided to come to my studio and sit and read and watch my daughter do her live. And then I'm like, well, while she's doing the live, there's nobody on live, so I don't have any mod duties right now. So I might as well read my book. So that's what I'm doing. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you with the Book of Boundaries. Bye. Hey, friend. Okay, so now I'm reading the Book of Boundaries. And I am reading the first 2 chapters. We filmed on the Book of Boundaries before and talked about it. But I decided that, well, I didn't decide. I'm in a study program right now with one of my dear soul sisters, and we're studying both these books so that we can come back and do a discussion on it at another time. And I have to read 2 chapters. Previously I did the let them theory, but I only read the end of chapter 2 aloud to you. So I figured I'd try to do the Book of Boundaries here and see how long it takes us to read out aloud. So we're reading chapter 1 in the Book of Boundaries, a crash course on boundaries. Not long ago, I received a direct message from Charlie, who follows me on Instagram. She was dreading an upcoming visit with her mom and sent me an SOS the day before her trip. Tomorrow, I'm seeing my mom for the first time since gaining 20 pounds, she wrote. My weight and hers has always been a favorite topic for her, even though I hate talking about it. Her comments cut straight to my self-esteem and aren't helpful, though I assume she intends them to be. We already have a strained relationship because of this, but I have missed her over the past year. I'd just love a good, fun visit instead of one that leaves me feeling insecure. This kind of dread should ring an alert inside your brain. Ding, ding, ding. Boundary needed. If a boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area, in this case, your area of comfort, safety, and mental health, then feeling anxious, nervous, or avoidant of a certain person or conversation topic is a sure sign that your limits are being overrun and that a boundary is necessary. Unfortunately, most of us ignore those alerts in favor of, well, less healthy responses. You show up for the visit prepared for battle, exploding in anger at the first casual comment. You cancel last minute without reason, leaving your loved one feeling confused and hurt. Or you sell yourself out, joking about your weight first to take away the other person's power to hurt you. You've allowed anxiety, hurt feelings, and resentment to invade your relationships because you haven't known how to make the relationship function better. But now you know boundaries are the solution and the very first step in knowing when you need one. The 3 steps of boundaries are: number 1, identify the need for a boundary. Number 2, set the boundary using clear, kind language. And number 3, hold the boundary. Step 1, identify the need for a boundary. Last year, while I was visiting my parents, they surprised me with a discussion about the way I was choosing to co-parent with my son's father. Though they were coming from a good place, they overstepped in a major way by inserting their strong opinions into my parenting, and the rest of the visit was awkward and uncomfortable. In the months that followed, my parents invited us to come see them several different times, but I kept finding reasons to say we couldn't make it. I was busy with work, my son had a play date, the weather wasn't great. Of course, the real reason I was avoiding them was that I didn't want them to spring the parenting conversation on me again. At one point, my new husband gently asked, "So, are you just going to never see them again?" Oh, pause. I found this annoyingly perceptive. Obviously, I wanted to see my parents again, but I also wanted them to respect my right to make my own decisions about my own child. I needed to set a boundary. The next time we visited, as soon as we arrived, I said, "Hey, I'm not talking about my son's dad with you anymore. I'm his mom, and I am not asking for your feedback around co-parenting." To be honest, it seemed like my parents knew this was coming. They said they understood and would respect my request. I was then able to relax and enjoy our time together, sharing family updates without fear they'd make the same kinds of suggestions again. This is the perfect example of how boundaries can make a relationship better. I dreaded seeing my parents solely because of anxiety around this one conversation topic. Then I realized I could just tell them it wasn't a conversation I was willing to have. Immediately, a weight was lifted. I was able to fully enjoy being with them, and my parents knew exactly where my limits were. A boundary is about your behavior, not theirs. I may not like the idea of my parents questioning my decisions, but I can't make them stop thinking independent thoughts or talking about my parenting amongst themselves. What I can do is set a limit around the way I receive those thoughts. The boundary isn't, "Don't question my decisions," because that isn't under my control. Instead, I say, "I won't accept your opinions on my decisions," because that focuses on my behavior, not theirs. We'll dive into this more on page 35. I bet you can think of at least 12 scenarios just like this in your own life right now. Feeling dread or anxiety around the idea of spending time with someone is the loudest sign that a boundary is needed. Maybe you want to avoid seeing someone because they offer unsolicited advice on your weight, your relationship or lack thereof, or your baby-making status. Maybe they bring conflict and drama wherever they go, always gossiping, complaining, or fixating on negative news. Maybe they guilt trip you. every time you tell them no. Maybe every time you interact, you leave feeling taken advantage of. Think about the relationships in your life, familial, professional, or even friendships. Are there any relationships you feel conflicted about right now? These could even be relationships with people you really like, admire, and want to keep in your life. But the thought of interacting with them brings an impeding sense of foreboding, anxiety, or dread. That pit of your stomach feeling is a key indicator that there is some aspect of your relationship that would be smoothed over or repaired with a boundary or sex. Sometimes, though, the signs that a boundary is needed can be subtle. Let's talk about energy leakage. Excuse me, has anyone seen my energy? Energy leakage. It sounds pretty woo, but I bet you know what it feels like. Every interaction you have, whether it's meeting your mom for lunch, replying to a social media comment, or just thinking about your ex, is an energetic exchange. Sometimes those exchanges leave you feeling invigorated, positive, and restored. But we all know what it feels like to leave the restaurant, close Instagram, or stop looking through those old photos and feel depleted, anxious, overwhelmed, frustrated. This is energy leakage, where your interactions are consuming more energy than they're giving back. You may not even realize it's happening, but this is why you feel depressed after conversations with that coworker who is always unhappy in the middle of drama or gossiping. It's why you feel exhausted after even a short visit with your critical in-laws. It's why you hit decline every time you see that one friend's name pop up on your cell phone. I got a few of those myself. In these interactions, your energy is getting sucked in only one direction, out. That feeling is a sure sign that your relationship is missing a boundary. Signs you might need a boundary. You feel dread or anxiety around a conversation topic. You consistently avoid certain people. You regularly receive unsolicited opinions or commentary. You feel like the relationship is one-sided. You agree to everything just so things can go smoothly. You're told directly or indirectly that their feelings are more important than yours. You feel drained in their presence or after they leave. You are regularly sucked into their conflict or drama. You feel negative or anxious after spending time with them. You've considered taking a break from them. Energy leakage also happens outside of relationships with other people. Sometimes it's self-inflicted. You might notice your energy is quickly depleted when you drink alcohol, shop online out of boredom or anxiety, make up fights or stressful scenarios inside your head, compare yourself relentlessly to others on social media, watch the news, or stay up late zoning out on Netflix. If you find your solo endeavors leave you feeling angry, drained, or just plain depressed, it's the perfect place to set a boundary with yourself, a loving limit from you to you, designed to keep you safe and healthy. We'll talk more about self-boundaries in Chapter 10. Boundaries aren't mean. A woman named Nancy recently sent me a message on social media. I take a walk by myself every morning for my own mental health. Lately, my elderly neighbor has been inviting herself along, waiting for me to come outside, then joining me. She's very nice, and it's clear she likes the company, but this is the only alone time I get in my day. How can I say no to her without feeling mean? I get where Nancy's coming from. We, especially women, are often told that it's selfish to put our own feelings and needs first. This is a common objection to boundaries, that setting them feels cold or punitive, like you're building like you're building a wall between people and creating division. But remember, boundaries aren't walls, they're fences, and good fences make good neighbors. Boundaries allow those who care about us to support us in the way we want to be supported. They provide a clear line between the helpful and the harmful, so people don't have to try to read our minds. They let us engage in relationships fully and openly, knowing we've clearly expressed our limits and made it easier for others to respect our needs. In fact, the best way to preserve a relationship often includes setting boundaries within it. Nancy liked her neighbor and wanted to have a good relationship with her. If this neighbor kept crashing her morning walks, Nancy was going to become resentful, then angry, and perhaps even lash out one morning out of sheer frustration. Setting a boundary here would be an act of kindness, allowing Nancy to care for her neighbor without putting her own needs on hold to do so. I asked Nancy how many mornings she might be willing to spend in her neighbor's company, from 0 days to every morning of the week. She replied that she'd enjoy walking with her once a week on the weekend, so I sent Nancy a script for her to use the following day. Good morning. Hey, I'm going to start walking by myself again during the week. This is the only alone time I get, and I really need it for my mental health. Would you like to join me on Saturday morning when things are less busy? Nancy loved the suggestion. This allowed them both to get what they wanted, some quality time when they're both feeling relaxed, and the alone time Nancy needed to recharge during the busy work week. You're not being mean when you set boundaries. You're being kind to yourself and your relationships. But that doesn't mean they're not uncomfortable. Any conflict can be uncomfortable. If your burger comes out rare instead of medium well, I'm betting at least some of you would just eat it rather than speak up. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable because when we set a boundary, we're expressing a limit that hasn't yet been established, while perhaps pointing out someone else's inconsiderate behavior and asking if the other person is willing to make an adjustment for the good of the relationship. If that just made you throw up in your mouth a little bit, you're not alone. My research shows that the main reason people don't set boundaries where they need them is that it's so damn uncomfortable. I won't try to pretend otherwise. I feel it too. It's not always easy for me to say no to an esteemed work colleague, to ask my husband for alone time, or to tell my parents I won't discuss this with you further. Speaking up in the moment, advocating for yourself, and asking for what you need is uncomfortable. But what's both uncomfortable and damaging is reaffirming the story that someone else's feelings are more important or worthy than your own, which is what you do every time you swallow your healthy boundary in an effort to keep the peace. The truth is, when someone oversteps your limit, there is no comfortable solution. Excuse me. But one path is paved with short-term discomfort that leads to major long-term improvements in your health and happiness. And the other path is just an endless circle that leaves you feeling unworthy, anxious, angry, and resentful. One of those sucks way more. And for those of you stuck on this sucky path, I have to ask, how's that been working out for you? Really? How has it felt to honor everyone's needs but your own? To sell yourself out, to keep other people happy? To take on too much whenever people demand it? To spend all that energy on people, conversations, or behaviors that never give you anything back? Said with so much love, I bet the reason you're reading this book is that it's not going very well at all. Just the opposite. It's going very well for me. What I'm giving you here is a better way, one that leads to more fulfilling relationships, improved self-confidence, better health, and more time and energy for the things that are important to you. It may be uncomfortable, but I guarantee it will be worth it. Boundaries are how we care, stay supportive, and give to those we love without sacrificing our own health and happiness in the process. Step 2, the boundary using clear, kind language. Remember Charlie, who was dreading seeing her mom because she knew her mom would comment on her weight? Charlie recognized the need for a boundary, but she didn't know exactly what to say. So Charlie asked me, can you give me some words to set a boundary that I don't want to talk about my weight or her weight? My mom will see any boundary I set as a personal attack on her, so I want to summarize my feelings without sounding overly harsh. Here's something that may sound obvious but isn't. In order to set a boundary, you have to actually set the boundary. You can't hint, suggest, or otherwise behave in a manner that is designed to get others to guess where your limit is. People aren't mind readers. Ding, ding, ding. If you need to set a limit around your own comfort, safety, or mental health, you'll have to spell it out. Got to take a little pause. Okay, and we're back. I know that's the scary part, but it's also the kind part. If you were going to tattoo one boundary-related phrase somewhere on your body, it should be clear is kind. If you do this somewhere other than your butt cheek, please DM me a picture. In fact, you'll hear this phrase over and over again in this book. It comes from Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, Brave Work, Tough Conversations, Whole Hearts. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind, 100%. Brené describes picking up this saying from a 12-step meeting, something else we have in common. But in her book, she applies it to a professional environment. She writes, feeding people half-truths or bullshit to make them feel better, which is almost always about making ourselves feel more comfortable, is unkind. Can I get an amen? Not getting clear with a colleague about your expectations because it feels too hard, yet holding them accountable or blaming them for not delivering is unkind. Clear is kind. I love Brené's work, and this idea now forms one of the central tenets of my boundary practice and teachings. When it comes to boundaries, clear is kind. Showing people exactly where your limit is and how they can help you preserve it is kind. By comparison, leaving them to guess, wonder, or face your disappointment and frustration is frustration if they unknowingly get it wrong is quite unkind. It's so true. Sorry, I gotta highlight something here. And I know I have one of my friends here. If you're watching this and you know that you don't like writing in the books, well, I'm sorry. Turn away. Turn away now. So if clear is kind, then the ideal boundary is direct, not squishy, not passive-aggressive, not up for interpretation. You'll find hundreds of examples in this book. But I want you to think about one thing when you're considering the words you'll use to set your next boundary? When I'm done talking, will they know exactly where my limit is and how to avoid crossing it? If the answer is yes, congratulations. You set a clear, kind boundary. If the answer is, I hope so, like it should be obvious, right? Then we're not quite there. Squishy boundary, eye roll, deep sigh, ignoring the question or making a joke about it. Clear boundary, I'd rather not talk about our bodies or weight today. Thank you. It's not too late. Another common challenge with setting boundaries is not being able to grasp the full gravity of the misstep in the moment or feeling such shock at a statement or action that you're unable to quickly respond to it. It's the second most common cited reason for not setting a boundary. And it's happened to me too. I can remember multiple occasions in my old job where a coworker made a highly inappropriate and sexist joke in front of me, and I just froze. Internally, I was thinking, what just happened? This person is a vice president. What am I supposed to do? In the meantime, the conversation kept rolling along, and by the time I got my feet underneath me, the moment had passed, and it felt awkward to speak up. Had I blurted out wow in that moment, perhaps conversation would have stopped, and I could have said, John, I cannot let that slide. Not the most eloquent boundary, but better than nothing. But even if you froze in the moment and they say nothing, it's never too late to establish and communicate a boundary for future interactions. Here are a few strategies for doing so, even if the moment has passed. Circle back. Ask the person to return to that part of the conversation once you can clearly state the issue and share your boundary from here on out. That might be 5 minutes from now, an hour from now, or the next day. Don't let too much time pass, though, or your conversation partner is likely to have forgotten the details of what felt like an ordinary discussion to them. Explain what happened from your perspective. Yesterday, you made this joke about women climbing the corporate ladder. It felt really icky to me, and I want you to know I didn't find it funny or appropriate. Focus on what's happening now. If your conversation partner says something like, well, you should have said so. Tell the truth. Honestly, I was just shocked in the moment and wasn't sure how to reply. I've had a minute to think about it, though, and it's important that I share. Communicate your new limit proactively. From now on, I'm going to start calling out inappropriate behavior on the spot, no matter who's in the room. You have a lot of women reporting to you. Please do better. With practice, you'll be able to spot boundary violations faster and can develop a few go-to phrases for calling them out or buying yourself time to evaluate the situation as it occurs. Even if your initial statement is less than clear, like, wait, that's not okay, or hold on, I need to back up for a second, it's still a step in the right direction toward finding your voice and setting the right limits for yourself when you need them, even if the limit itself is communicated after the fact. Clear, kind language starts and ends with you. An important idea you should use to direct your boundary language is that a healthy boundary always comes from the self. Remember, you're not telling Uncle Joe he can't smoke. You're saying you don't allow smoking in your house. Boundaries aren't about controlling the other person. They're about the limits you put in place around yourself to stay healthy and safe. In the case of my parents, they can talk smack about my ex-husband to each other all they want, but they now know not to bring it up with me. Nancy's neighbor is free to keep walking the same route, but she knows to let Nancy walk alone unless it's Saturday. You aren't attempting to control what other people do, you're expressing what your limits are. A boundary doesn't tell someone else what to do, it tells them what you will do. This might seem confusing because in the boundary scripts throughout this book, you will see a lot of requests. Would you please take that cigarette outside? Could you confirm for this weekend before I buy tickets? Can we hold off on that vent session? I need an hour of downtime first. But remember, each of those requests will be centered around your healthy limit. Here are 3 things to keep in mind. Boundaries come from a desire to establish and preserve your limit. People are not mind readers, so you need a way to communicate that limit. If someone continues to overstep, you will take the action you need to hold the boundary. In the example where Uncle Joe lights a cigarette inside your house, your boundary is, I don't allow smoking inside to protect my health and because I don't like the smell. But Uncle Joe might not know that, so you need to make your boundary clear. What you might say is, oh, please take that cigarette outside before you light it. We don't smoke inside the house. You're not trying to persuade Uncle Joe to quit smoking. That would be controlling, not a boundary. You're not telling him not to smoke in his own house or anyone else's house. That's not your boundary to set. You're only using your request to draw a limit around your house and your health. If Uncle Joe balks at going outside, you might reinforce the boundary by saying, then please put the cigarette out. I said I don't allow smoking inside the house. Yes, this requires Uncle Joe's cooperation, but the focus is still on reinforcing your limit. If Uncle Joe refuses to do either, rude, then you might no longer allow him to visit. Exactly. An action you take to enforce the consequences of your boundary. Tell me more and why you might not want to. A clear, kind boundary doesn't require you to explain or make excuses for your needs. Nancy might be tempted to say, my walks are the only alone time I get each morning, and my life is so busy and chaotic right now. Work is a mess, and my kids are at a tough age. I feel bad asking, but as a means to softening the blow. But this approach can be problematic. First and most important, it's not necessary to share the context of your boundary. Your limit is your limit. Repeat after me. People don't need to understand or agree with my boundary to respect it. Exactly. You don't need to do all that explaining. I'll emphasize this here because women have been conditioned to see selflessness as a virtue and to require a damn good reason and often approval to ask for anything for ourselves. It can feel deeply uncomfortable to state your boundary and let it stand without over-explaining, making excuses, or justifying our desires. So that is exactly what I'm asking you to practice, as a means of reminding yourself that you are worthy of having and meeting your own needs. Every time I acknowledge and honor my own needs without asking for permission, quote unquote, first, I think of it as giving a quiet middle finger to the patriarchy. In addition, adding context to your boundary may actually backfire. By explaining, you've made it possible for your conversation partner to disagree with your reasoning, therefore canceling the need for a boundary in their minds. Imagine Nancy over-explaining and her neighbor saying, life can't be that hard. It's just a walk, and we don't even have to walk. Over-explaining can shift the focus to your reasoning and not the boundary itself, requiring you to justify further when all you had to say is, oh, I can't walk with you today. Have a great day. Sharing the detailed and perhaps overly exaggerated reason for your boundary can backfire in other ways too. Let's say 2 weeks later, your neighbor sees your family outside and asks if your work is any less busy. Your helpful spouse answers, yes, things are great. She finally got an assistant and work is so much more manageable. It's nice to see her more relaxed. Cue the neighbor popping in for a morning walk the very next day, because surely you don't need the alone time now that things have settled down. Over-explaining is a natural response when you feel uncomfortable or when you've been taught to get approval from others before claiming something for yourself. The problem is providing unnecessary context or attempting to justify your needs gives the impression that our boundary isn't that strong, which means people will be more likely to try to plead guilt, reason, or pressure you out of it. Setting a boundary without explaining, justifying, or excusing is a truly boss move, indicating that you've given this plenty of thought. You're crystal clear on what you need and you're comfortable advocating for yourself. Plus, if you truly believe setting healthy boundaries is an act of kindness, then there is no blow to soften. Going back to Charlie and her mom, they were close and had an otherwise great relationship. And Charlie wanted to share from the heart how this boundary would improve their time together and support her mental health. I advised her to use this script for a text message as a starting point. Hi, Mom. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. One thing I wanted to bring up before our visit, the pandemic has me feeling really insecure about my body. I'm sure you'll notice some changes when you see me. But any conversation about it, no matter how well-meaning, would trigger negative thoughts and distract me all day. I really want to enjoy my time with you, so I'm asking that we don't talk about our weight or how our bodies look. Charlie loved that language, telling me that it perfectly sums up my feelings without sounding harsh or accusatory. See, clear is kind. Step 3. Hold the boundary, enforcing consequences if necessary. The first rule of parenting that I learned was to never set a consequence. I'm not willing to enforce no iPad for a week. Hurts me just as much as it hurts my 9-year-old, and he knows it. The same goes for a boundary. In order for it to be effective, it has to be enforceable, and you have to be willing to enforce it. That means that even after the scary, uncomfortable practice of setting the boundary, you're still not quite there. You must now hold that boundary. The ideal boundary usually includes a component we've only touched upon, the consequence. This is the step you'll take to hold that boundary. Should your conversation partner prove unable or unwilling to respect it? Usually, I leave the consequence unsaid, and first time I set a boundary. This helps me to avoid coming off as unnecessarily harsh. Nancy telling her elderly neighbor, I'll be walking alone during the week now, and if you try to join me, I will sprint in the other direction until I lose you, would not fall into the kind category. I may even leave it unsaid the second time in the spirit of good faith that my conversation partner might have simply forgotten. However, should my boundary continue to be dismissed or disrespected, it's time for a restatement plus a clear consequence. In the case of Nancy's neighbor, she might restate her boundary by saying, I've mentioned I won't be walking with you during the week, but share a consequence if her neighbor continues to try to invite herself along. She might say, if we can't come to an understanding about this, I'll start taking my morning walks elsewhere, or I'm going to start leaving in the morning without stopping to say hello, so please don't take it personally. If we're being super picky, the consequence technically is the boundary. The concrete establishment of the limit in the form of the action you're going to take to keep yourself safe and healthy. In Nancy's case, that might be driving to the park to walk, leaving for her walk at a different time each morning, or starting her walk with a brisk jog to the end of the block. But jumping straight to the consequence doesn't leave a lot of room for connection, which isn't good for the relationship and doesn't give the other person an opportunity to help you meet your needs. That's why most of the time, you'll share your limit in the form of a request first. You're saying, here is this limit that I have recognized. I'd love for you to help me preserve it. Are you willing? That's a much kinder approach than saying nothing, than sneaking out the back door so your neighbor doesn't see you. When someone refuses to honor your boundary time and time again, it puts you in a really tight spot, You're faced with a difficult choice. Rescind the boundary, which will cause you harm, hurt the relationship, and set a nasty precedent. Or employ the consequence, which will likely be painful for you both and may change the relationship permanently. After multiple boundary violations and reminders, Charlie may tell her mom, I've asked you again and again to stop commenting on my weight. If you can't respect that, I'll need to take some time off from visits. Conversations about my body do a number on my mental health. I won't keep subjecting myself to that. But before she goes there, she needs to ask herself, will I really not visit? Am I willing to distance myself for a while? Can I really follow through? There are no easy answers here, especially when it's family who continually disregard your boundaries. But I have to ask, how good is the relationship if the other person won't do the bare minimum to keep you healthy and safe? Is it worth repeating falling on your sword when the other person isn't willing to do something relatively small to demonstrate their respect and care? How much of yourself are you willing to give up? Tactics for holding your boundaries. Here are some strategies you can use in the moments to hold a boundary you've set with someone else. Restate the boundary. It seems redundant, but try to use the same language every time you talk about your boundary, whether in person, in writing, like via text or email, or over the phone. If Charlie's mom casually brings up her weight, over lunch, Charlie could say, remember, it's important for my mental health right now that we don't discuss our bodies or weight. This reinforces that respecting this boundary is good for Charlie and their relationship. Add information as needed. If necessary in the moment, be even more specific about what is and isn't within your limits. And give examples. Charlie might add, when I asked that we not talk about our bodies, that includes other people's bodies too. Even Kim Kardashian's. Let's not talk about anyone's body, okay? Explain the consequences. If your limits continue to be disrespected, it's time to share what you are willing to do to keep yourself safe and healthy. Charlie would say, Mom, you keep bringing up my weight, though I've asked you not to. If you can't honor this simple request, I'm going to cut our visit short. And force is needed. If your boundaries still aren't being respected in a way that works for you, it's time to enforce the boundary by taking action. Charlie might set even more limits around, interactions with her mom, like communicating only via email or text and not visiting in person. Or she might have to make the hard decision to employ the ultimate consequence, cutting off communications, at least temporarily, as a last-ditch effort to preserve her own health and safety. We'll talk more about navigating boundary resistance and other challenges in Chapter 11. But in Charlie's case, a boundary was needed. The script was rehearsed and executed, and as they often do, it went beautifully. Charlie sent me a follow-up a few days later saying, yesterday was one of the best visits with my mom in a long time. She honored my request 100%. And I felt so supported and understood. Thank you. I love that. Okay, well, this chapter has a lot more pages. So I'm going to stop here. But thank you so much for reading part of chapter 1 with me of the Book of Boundaries. And we'll get back at it again. Next time I think I'm going to do it live. And I'm going to read it live. So stay tuned for that. Love you plenty. Bye, friend.